friends. Welcome back to Universal Talks, where we dive deep into consciousness, healing, and the infinite possibilities of the quantum field. Today, we are blessed with Matt Schmidt, a former scientist turned quantum healer with an incredible story of transformation. Matt spent years developing pharmaceutical drugs to treat CNS disorders and cancer, yet, despite all his medical knowledge, he found himself stuck, taking 14 medications, suffering from grand mal seizures, and feeling depleted. Everything changed after his first quantum healing session. His seizures stopped instantly, and within 2 months, he was off all medication. That experience led him to a profound realization. Healing isn't just physical, it is quantum. But before we get into his amazing, powerful awakening, hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi, this is awesome. Thanks for having me on, Kenneth.
Yes, my pleasure. My pleasure. I want to say it's been a long time coming just because it's one of those soul connections. I'm like, ah, yes, there you are. We're just meeting in the physical now.
Well, well, I feel that even from the first time came across you, definitely felt it. So,
Yes. Yes, a bro star, a fellow bro star for sure. So let's just start from the beginning. What was your childhood like? What was young Matt like?
I'm curious, always just like looking for answers and looking for things and exploring. And I don't
Hmm.
know, that kind of led me, down the scientific path. And then obviously it led me into this. And
Right.
it's kind of weird looking back on it because, like, I think we get so invested in a certain like belief system, especially when like that I don't know, you're so invested into a way of thinking, like I was in college for 11 years, like it's
Oh
pretty
wow, yeah.
pounded in by that time, and
Hmm.
to shift out of that and realize like, hey, maybe you don't know everything was probably the hardest part.
Yeah, the unlearning is the biggest step sometimes. Yeah.
Spend more time on that than I say that all the time. Like I feel like I'm unlearning more than actually learning
Yes.
at this point, but
Yes. It's necessary.
it's also been part of the journey, and I see it's very purposeful now because I can kind of bridge that gap for people that
Hmm.
like like, come over here,
Yeah, and
come.
it's a skill of evolving to be able to let something go, to let something else in. It's a process, but it's necessary.
Yeah, I think even just being able to like talk the talk still
Yes.
helps people to bring people across and like and
Yeah.
I didn't say like bring people across. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, and like these two worlds aren't talking
Right.
yet,
Yes,
and we
because
can.
I always say the spiritual and the science has shouldn't have never been separated because it is one and the same. So it's just we're at that time I feel like in our evolution where we are seeing with quantum physics and everything, all of the things. I'm like, all my nerd things are coming together. Like, I am
It's
so
happening.
happy.
I
It
know.
is, yes, finally. And I can have conversations that I, not that I couldn't before, but like people actually are understanding now. And it's a great time. It really
Oh,
is. Yeah.
and
So,
everything. I mean, it's like like, oh, everything's connected across the universe, and scientists are like, well, quantum entanglement.
yes, yeah.
It's just like
Let me put a word to it. It's like, okay, whatever, but at
their
least,
science word. Like
yeah.
another one I was talking about yesterday was like with someone who was generational trauma, and now it's
Ugh,
epigenetic inheritance. I'm like, oh,
yes,
sure,
I
we have
know.
a name for it now. It's
Words, yes.
like
Especially with
it's
the English language, is like just there's calm down with the words. Like Jesus. So did you always have like even as a kid, were you into science?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of you're like a lot of biology, like chasing animals and looking at rocks and just like I don't know, just taking in the world, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's just like yeah, looking back, I'm like, when do we stop questioning everything? And now like I question everything again. I used to hate not knowing, and now I'm
Yeah.
like, now
Yeah.
that's like I live in the gray zone because I'm like maybe I don't
Right.
know.
Yes. It's a good place to be.
uh, but yeah, it's great because I'll learn like one thing and I'm like, well, there's 20 more things I don't know, which
Yeah.
makes it exciting because it's like seeing the world with like kid eyes again.
It
So.
is. Yeah, and it's necessary, especially once you like integrate the inner child, when you go through all that work, it is like seeing with fresh eyes and it's so fun. It really is. The
I'm
doom
sure
and
you
gloom
find
is there. Yeah, there's that shitty shit, but
yeah. Well, just getting back to that, you look at a 2-year-old, they're not depressed, they don't have back problems. It's not
exactly.
till like
Exactly. Yeah.
until life happens that we pack on
Right.
this stuff, and it is getting
Exactly.
back to that childlike awe, that joy, that wonder. They're not worried about what people think. They're not like they're
No.
just in the moment. They're
In the
just
moment. Yeah.
looking it all in. So.
It's beautiful.
Mhm.
So you were deep into the medical field. What drew you to the pharmaceutical part of it?
I knew I wanted to help people, and I thought that was the way.
Yeah.
So I was actually looking at natural products, natural sources for treating certain disorders and diseases and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And my old way of thinking is I kind of looked at the human body like a car. Like, well, let's what's broken? What do we need to fix? And totally missed this whole other like,
Yeah.
spiritual aspect of things. And it was very just like cold and very, oh, what's broken? What do we need to repair here? And
Hmm.
kind of how I saw the world. Like, if there isn't something we have a treatment for, it's just we didn't find it yet.
Right. Yeah. Very
Now
black and white.
it
Yeah.
was. Now I
Yeah.
look at all the old work as like kind of just putting duct tape over the check engine light in your car and thinking you fix the problem because
Exactly.
you get to
Yeah.
why that's happening in the first place.
Hmm.
All you're doing is treating the symptom, but you didn't actually address the human or the person. So
Exactly.
what I love about the work that we're in now is it doesn't detract from anything I know scientifically, medically. All it does is add another layer, another lens, and
I
that's the
love that.
beautiful part of it. So
Yeah.
when people talk about this as being like, "Oh, this is alternative science or alternative medicine." It's like, no, this is complementary. This is,
Exactly.
I don't know, and
Yeah.
I think people are starting to realize that now. Like, there's more
Hmm.
than just this like physical machine, this Newtonian
Right. Yeah.
yeah, of the body,
And
and
after so many scientists and officials and governments with all the aliens and all the everything, just people are actually just wait, maybe we are multidimensional. Maybe this isn't just it. Maybe I should heal some things. It's again, I always say I'm here for it because it's an exciting time. When did you start feeling that conventional medicine wasn't enough for your own healing?
I still thought it was. I didn't know there was an option. I didn't know there was other ways. Even when I started diving into this stuff, I basically gave up. I mean, I think they call it surrender. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to a point where it was like everything just kept flopping. So like the last thing I was working on was like a cancer research center. Had like me and another guy set this up, and we had like 15 researchers on board, all the hospitals, and then like a month before we launched it, we lost like $15 million in funding, and like the
Wow.
building's still sitting empty, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm like, just started questioning everything, like, what is going on? What is wrong? And that was
Yeah.
like my sign. I was supposed to be shifting gears, but I wasn't getting the hint. I kept trying to do everything the only way I knew.
Hmm.
And
And
finally,
this
it
and
just,
the universe, the signs will get louder and harder and more intense if you're
yeah,
not
and
listening.
I'm stubborn, so
Yeah.
determined. We'll say
Right,
determined.
yeah,
Uh,
scientist with that you have to be with that brain. Yeah, yeah.
because that used to work. I mean, when I was in that, it felt like a red carpet rolled out for me when I walked, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I didn't know that the universe was trying to shift me into another path, so it was
Yes.
this kind of hard shift. But
Hmm.
once I got it, the red carpet appeared again, and things got easier. But it took like probably a year of just like going down these rabbit holes, questioning everything. I started
Hmm.
finding the work of like Dolores Cannon. That
Hmm.
that kind of brought a bunch of things to my attention, and I'm like, what don't I know? So she'd be talking about the one I remember. She'd be talking about ancient Egyptian history with someone in England,
Yeah.
and she'd be doing a session with someone. She'd come to the United States, and the person would pick up where the other person left off. And I'm like, what don't I know?
Yes.
How do I not
Yeah.
know this?
Yeah.
Here's this redneck lady from Arkansas that looks like anyone's grandma talking about this
Right.
just matter of factly. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how? What am I not getting here?
Hmm.
And that really just like stuck with me. So that pushed me to have my own session. Like you said, like I after that first session, my whole world changed, and that's where I actually found out I was supposed to be shifting gears and doing this work. And that's the only
Beautiful.
answer I had trouble with because I'm like, there's no way. Like I cannot see myself doing this.
I know. Yeah. It's hard. Looking back, it's like I think BQH, all it did was give me a title for what I was already doing, which is helpful to have like that verbiage and all that in the community is beautiful and great. But I'm like, I couldn't imagine people just 10 years ago doing what we are doing now. And that's why I love this like current, like I say just since in the 2020s, the shift with conscious exploration and just exploration, I should say. And it's amazing. It really is.
I love it. Yeah, never a dull day at the office. I'll tell you that.
Oh, oh my God, no, no.
For someone who gets bored easy, this is like the best job in the world.
It
So.
really is. Yeah. Every single moment's different and very unique. Yeah. So speaking of, like, could you walk us through that first quantum healing experience that you had that shifted everything?
It was like the information coming through felt like pretty vanilla, but I think I was just like on the edge of the cliff looking over. So that was just like this tipping point where it just like catapulted me. All this
Gotcha.
thing shifted. So, like you said, I was having grand mal seizures. I was having those like every week. The last one I had was like an hour long on the maximum amount of medication. So like kind of dictated my life a lot
Wow.
for. They're kind of under control for a while with the medication, but even like ones like that would pop through. I'm like, okay, I have to address this somehow.
Yeah.
Um, I was only sleeping like 2 or 3 hours a night, and after like 40 years, you just think that's how you are. Didn't know there was a way to like shut that off, and like that changed instantly. I started sleeping every single night. I'm like, I didn't know this was like an option. Like, and I think people are starting to realize that now too. People are like, as they're questioning things, they're like, okay, this is not working.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think there are more options available to people even than there were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You can see,
Mhm.
look around you, like all this stuff is changing. So,
Yes. Yeah.
um, even like in the last like year or two, I had probably a half dozen truck drivers that were hearing me on podcasts. Like, so I get all these truckers now that are like, didn't
That's
think it was going to be a demographic,
amazing.
but
I
they're
love
they're
that.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
looking for answers too. So
Yes. Yeah. That's so cool.
everyone's
So,
hungry.
yeah, you went from all those medications, like I think you said 14 to none in just 2 months. Like how was that process?
It was kind of scary, not gonna lie, because
Yeah.
I've been on some for 25 years, and like
Yeah.
they were like heavy amounts. And looking back, you wouldn't give a horse some of these things. Like I was prescribed 6 milligrams of Xanax a night just to fall asleep for 2 hours, like basically
Ooh.
black out and wake up again.
Wow.
And for those that don't know, like they usually start people on a half milligram or something like that. Like
Yeah.
don't know anyone that takes that. And we'd hear, "Oh,
Jesus.
just take more," and it was just kind of obnoxious. And then for all the side effects of the drugs, and like I thought that was the right way. It's just like, "Oh, you take this. Well, for how long?" "No, no, you just take this now." Like,
Right.
like they're not permanent solutions, but that's all that we had available. So
Yeah.
um, I was off. I think it took me like I was off a lot of them in the first week or so, and then like some of the seizure stuff I weaned off just because you're more likely to have a seizure if you come off fast. So
Hmm.
that's why I weaned off that. But I still had this dark cloud following me, wondering when the next one was going to come back, and
I'm
then
sure.
and it just didn't happen. And
That's
now it's been
amazing.
6 years. So, and I know
Wow.
from helping people every day, I just know that's not even a thing because I just don't need that anymore. So, what came through
Wow.
is to to like help teach me compassion and all these things. And they're like, my higher self, which comes through during these sessions, they said, "Oh yeah, you learned what you needed to, so you just don't need them anymore." And I'm like, really? Like that's it? Like, and it was like someone flipped a switch and that they're just done. Like,
Wow. I love
um,
those stories. That's so cool.
and then I get to pass that on to other people. That's probably the best gift in
Hmm.
the world. Like to be
It
able to share
is.
that with people. Like, oh my gosh, I can't think of more fulfilling work. So,
Yeah, one of my favorite like stories is how a client turns into a practitioner themselves. It's just like spreading that light and just tapping it and that watching the ripple effect and it's yeah, it's beautiful. It really is. So
I was,
wait, was that session, I don't know if I asked, was that a QHHT session or was that
it was a QHHT. So
was
I
it?
found
Okay.
Dogs Cannon. I hunted down someone that trained with her, and then from there, the rest was kind of history. So.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Even like it's interesting how other stuff shifts. You talk about the ripple. So like as a side effect, I lost like 60 pounds in 2 months just from stuff my mind was hanging on to because I had this like
Yeah.
on everything and like
Yeah.
all these things just started shifting and I was waiting for it to like go away, but then you're just at this new natural like set point and it's like
Yeah.
this is weird. I actually had anxiety because I didn't have anxiety. I was like which eventually like faded out. I'm like it's the weirdest
Yeah.
spot to be in.
Right. Reaching that new baseline. Yeah.
Yeah, and all these other things just kind of shifted with that. I mean, you're just feeling lighter and like even the people around you. We always think it's like other people, but
Yeah.
I had a boss that I'd get into an argument with every single day. Everyone had like an issue with this lady. After I went through this process, we didn't argue the next 2 years.
I
It's just
believe it. Yeah.
like, but she didn't know what I did. So I was like watching that play out. I'm like, oh my gosh, how much of my life is being dictated by what's going on inside of me?
Yeah.
And then you really start taking your power back, which is really
Hmm. One of my favorite things is like after going to an event or just some kind of a gathering with one or two friends, and then afterwards talking about our experience, and mine's just like, oh, I talked to this person, and had a great interaction, a great conversation, and then my friends are like, oh my God, well, this person was a bitch, and I'm like, oh, that's a shame. Like, were we at the same place? Like, I don't understand. I guess vibration matters, doesn't it? Did you meditate today? Like, did you?
Even people that know they're pushing your buttons, if it's not fun anymore, they go find someone else. It's like the weirdest
That's
thing to watch.
true, yeah. But like
It's
attracts like, so if you're in like a
like,
doom or gloom, you're gonna attract that negative Nancy, or like instantly, like instantly.
yeah.
What were the biggest mindset shifts that you had to make in order to fully embrace this new path of yours?
Mine, I think I just had to like fully commit to it. So right before I decided to do this full time, I started being physically affected because I wasn't actually quitting my job. I was trying to do both things at the same time.
Oh, geez.
During that time, I actually fell out of a tree cutting trees. I hurt my shoulder, couldn't raise it above here, couldn't move it backwards. Went and saw a physical therapist, was told I needed rotator cuff surgery, and then I heard, "You're still hanging on to your old job." Like I had this death grip on my old way of life, and
Yeah.
like trying to do both things. And um, within 30 seconds of telling them I quit my job, it completely went away. And I was like, oh,
Beautiful.
okay. So from surgery to nothing in 30 seconds, just
Yep.
because I actually took that action step. So,
Yes.
and then like the other testing from the universe, I got offered a job for more than double my salary, and all I had to do was switch departments. And I'm like, you kidding me? And I turned it down.
Um,
And like, I know that like things would have not gone well, so I knew I had to like,
right. Just like one final little test there just to make sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, here you go. You passed, and it felt so good to say no, like to
I
turn down
bet. I
the option.
bet.
But my mind's like, what are you doing? But in my heart, like it felt like I knew it
Oh,
was
yeah.
right, on like shadow of a doubt. So
Hmm. That's beautiful. What have you discovered about the mind-body connection through your own healing journey?
everything is connected.
Yes.
Even through people and stuff. Like doing this work, I had no idea how connected stuff was until I started like working with people. Like I can't even get away with stuff anymore because I get called out the next day. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
no secrets in the universe. So I have
Yeah.
people that will tell me about my dreams. They're like, "Oh yeah, remember in your dream last night when this was happening?" And I was like,
Yes.
I do, but and like, but because of that, there's like we can really tap into anything. We can like really connect to anything, which is just a beautiful part of this.
It is.
Even for healing. So I focus a lot on the physical healing, just coming from my medical background. I just love that part of it.
Mhm.
Uh, Healing isn't curing, but a lot of times it translates into like physical things. So
For sure.
a lady found out about me healing my seizures, and she wanted to find out about her daughter. And I'm like, okay, we can ask. Her daughter's like 5 years old, and I was like, well, we can just ask in mom session because I wasn't working with kids at that time, and 5 is pretty young anyway. I'm usually
Yeah.
like is kind of where I cut off.
Okay.
Uh, and so I was asking in the mom session, and her higher self was explaining, oh yeah, the daughter took those on to teach mom this, 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 and this, and yeah, she learned so they can stop like that. They shut off. Never even met the kid.
Wow.
Like, so cool.
Wow.
So yeah, when you really get to realize like the bigger picture and all this, like it's just amazing. Like,
It
and
really
then in
is.
my mind, I'm like, how is this all orchestrated? Like, it just blows my mind how like the simplest things have to come into like alignment for something to happen, and
Hmm.
just
That's the
beautiful.
scientific brain in you, because I'm kind of like that too with the quantum physics, and I'm just like, again, I'm a nerd with all of it. I'm just, and how is this coming together? And now that we have again the words that scientists are coming up with, it's like, oh, now I can just tell you what is happening versus just say it was magic. It was,
Does feel like magic though, doesn't it?
it
Like,
totally is magic. It is, yeah. Like I'm still into that. I'm a skeptical person, but I'm still a fairy at heart for sure.
I'm done trying to refute any of this.
Yes, yeah.
It'd be too much to even try. So at this point, so
Seriously, yeah. So many people feel stuck in their health struggles. What's the first step toward real healing, would you say?
addressing the fear. So the
Yeah.
fear is probably the number one thing that keeps people stuck, and or they're just even just staying in something because it's familiar.
I was
So
gonna
how
say they
many
get too comfortable with it. Yeah.
Sure, and they're like uncomfortably comfortable. Like it can be like really not comfortable at all, but they stay in it just because that's what they know. So I would encourage those people to try anything different. do something different. Be like, well, I
Mhm.
don't have a choice. You always have a choice,
Yeah.
unless like even in jail, like I've been working with like some inmates and stuff, and like
Oh, nice.
you always have a choice. The only like even there, they'll tell me like the only prison is like the one in your mind. So it's like you still have the choices, even though they're more limited, but you have the choices within that
Yes.
to act a certain way, to behave a certain way, to respond a certain way. And it is really just kind of taking that power back and taking that responsibility, I guess, or accountability for your experience.
Hmm. That's beautiful. So, how do you get in touch with the inmates? I'm curious.
I've done them over like they have video phone,
Okay.
and yeah, it's pretty cool how those people don't get a lot of like they don't get a chance to process this stuff in the way people on the outside do. So like now
Yeah.
you just are just we talked about recycling these experiences. Okay, well if you didn't actually heal while you're in there, what do you expect when you get out? Like the only
Mhm.
thing you know is what you went in for. Well,
Yeah.
to really make that shift, I think to be able to help some of these people is just going to be like huge, and I'm hoping to get in to help some more of the inmates locally here, and but it's not as easy.
I'm
So
sure. Yeah. That's so cool. That's really cool.
I think people are coming around because like they're starting to have like more, they're starting to be aware of this, and it's like it's making the entire environment easier. Like
Yeah.
even doing like some of people are doing like yoga in prisons and stuff like that. Well, people are easy to deal with. They're not going to fight you on stuff if they're doing this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a win-win all the way around.
It is, and I think they're starting to come around to realize that. So
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Slowly but surely.
yeah.
How would you say quantum healing work on a deeper level goes beyond the physical body?
Ooh, good. I think a lot of it's on outside of the physical body, and we just notice those on a
Yeah.
physical level. So I
Right.
actually had this explained in one of the sessions I did. It was actually a group session, but I asked about it later. And a lady came to the group. She had metal pins and screws put in her arm 20 years ago where she injured it, and she wanted to focus on that because her shoulder was all messed up.
Yeah.
Uh, a week after the class, she pulled her bicep, went and had her bicep X-rayed, and all the metal pins and screws are gone, and the bone was healed. So
What?
like, so in my mind, I'm like, well, that's medical grade titanium, and it doesn't just dissolve.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like on a physical level, that's like totally impossible. But like on a
Yes.
quantum level, it was explained that she basically shifted to a version of her that was never injured.
Yes.
So real simply, I love to use this analogy. So it's kind of like all the radio stations are playing right now. You can't hear them until you're dialed into a certain frequency. So you're
Mm,
not able to experience them unless you're on a certain channel. Okay,
exactly.
all the radio stations don't stop just because you're dialed into one, but the one you're experiencing is the one that you're the vibration of or the frequency of.
Mm,
So a lot of the work that I'm doing with people is, well, she basically changed the station in simplest terms without
yeah.
getting too mathy or
Right. No, I love that
or
analogy.
people's
I'm the same. Yeah. Analogies help for sure.
So a lot of the work that we're doing with people are, well, why is their gum stuck in the dial? Like what's keeping you stuck on this channel?
Right.
And then once it's not this huge hurdle then to shift into a different reality, it's just this little bump that you can kind of sidestep into whatever you want.
Mm,
And um, I think we're just getting kind of started with some of those things. Like everything is way slipperier than I ever thought. So
yeah, for sure. Yes. Very fluid.
yeah.
You mentioned that last client, but have you worked with a client who experienced something similar to you in your healing?
Yeah, I tend to get a lot of those, just with, they'll people will hear about my story and
I'm
then try and
sure.
naturally attract those. But then because of the scientific work I do, I've been getting a lot of people with some of the heavier like central nervous system disorders like schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder, dissociative
Hmm.
identity disorder,
Yeah.
um, things like that. I get a lot of cancer ones because of my work in that cancer field. So I think I have like a sign above my head somewhere that people are just drawn to that. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
um, and so I get a lot of people like that, but pretty profound
Okay.
results with that too. So
I'm sure. I'm sure. So I'm curious, what is your take on like schizophrenia and all those mental disorders? Because I use the analogy sometimes of like a radio station or a TV station, and those individuals are watching too many or have access to too many stations at once, and Like, so I've used that analogy many times. So I'm curious of how you would explain those type of disorders.
With the schizophrenia people that I've had, well, first I should say I've had some that were just misdiagnosed.
Oh, sure.
I talk to them like, dude, you're just going through an awakening. Like that's what the rest of us call it.
Yes. Yes.
You're fine. They're
Yeah.
like freaking out, and they told me I have this, and I'm like, I talk to them like, there's nothing wrong in my eyes, like you're just going through it.
Yep. Yeah.
I think the people with schizophrenia that actually have that are have an expanded awareness. And if you were aware of all the stuff that's in the room right now, you'd probably have a hard time going to the grocery store and buying groceries,
Yes.
functioning in the real world. So
Yes.
the problem with our culture is we don't support these people. In another culture, a medicine man takes you under the wing. They teach you how to have a foot in both worlds. We don't do that here. We throw drugs at symptoms and try to forget about you.
Exactly.
So most of the work that I've been doing with them is just teaching them how to be okay in their world and how to use. It actually comes through that this is the gift that they chose for this life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's not if you don't know how to use it. Just like being an empath, if you don't know how to manage that, not a gift at all.
True.
Same thing with dissociative identity disorder. So that's a little bit different. That usually stems from we all go through traumas and stuff like that and things in our life. And in those cases, those individuals often compartmentalize those traumas. And in regular people, they can communicate between those those individual rooms.
Yeah.
Whereas in dissociative identity disorder, there's no communication; they're separate.
Mm.
And so part of the work is healing those aspects, bringing them together, and then teaching them also how to use that. So the one I remember fairly recently, she'd be missing like chunks of time. Like all of a sudden she'd drop into her 5-year-old self in the middle of work, and she was a nurse, and like so they're very like supportive. They kind of understood, but like hard to if you need them to help out, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
they're a 5-year-old, like you can imagine the struggle there. So
Yeah.
healing those aspects, bringing those together. But then what came through after that was this is the gift once again she chose for this life, and she can actually use that to connect to 17 perspectives simultaneously to solve problems.
Mm.
And now she went from being a nurse to a shaman, and she's like, the thing that was the thing she hated most about her life is now her biggest strength. And I'm like,
Wow.
how freaking cool is that?
That
Like,
is amazing.
and I'm like, that's why we do what we do,
It is. That should be on a poster. That's such an amazing story.
Yeah.
That's wow. Thank you for sharing that.
And I'm sure there are some severe cases. I haven't run into those yet, but
Well,
the
yeah,
ones
yeah.
that's, you know, I've had
Right.
a lot of success. And I was told not to work with any of those people. So the first thing I did was work with those people.
Of course,
And
yeah.
I figured given my background, I have a little bit more knowledge than other
Exactly.
people. But
Yeah.
like, especially doing this work, I'm like, oh, we're talking to your 5-year-old self. That's not weird at all in in this line of work, like
Right,
every
yeah.
day.
I've
So
always been drawn to it because again, I never saw the disconnect myself. So it's
yeah.
that's one of the many things I love about this work, for sure.
And you want to talk about like the science part of it? The one thing that stuck with me from not only just like um, being a research scientist and stuff like that, and studying the brain, central nervous system disorders and
Yeah.
stuff, was reading about these in journals. So we know how powerful our belief is, with the placebo effect, how much that can impact us.
Sure.
But people with dissociative identity disorder, they had such a strong belief that when they switched to these other personalities, that they had different traits. So one person would be fine drinking like orange juice, they'd switch to the other personality, and all of a sudden they'd break out in a rash because that other person was allergic to orange juice.
Fascinating.
One guy
Yeah.
would even switch his eye color every time he'd switch to a different person. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what don't we know?
Wow.
And these are like medical journals. These aren't like
Yeah.
that like really,
Wow.
really stuck with me. So
The eye ones, and that's wild. Because
yeah.
I've heard of that like during like shamanic or healings, but like in a medical record, that's really cool.
Yeah, it is. To be like studied and documented and just be like,
Yes.
oh, this happened. Like,
Wow.
what do you say to that? Like, how do you
Yeah,
even rationalize that coming from that background? But it's
for
pretty
sure.
cool.
That's so cool. So you mentioned that you were taught entity attachments and didn't, or that they did not exist. But what changed that you realized that they do, and it's part of the healing process?
A funny thing you should ask that. This is one that just like took me back quite a ways. So I was actually working with a person, and we were talking through what I thought was her higher self because I didn't know what else we could all connect to.
Yeah.
And I was asking for something like, okay, I asked what she needed for something to heal, and what came through was she needs to die. She needs to kill herself. And I'm like, oh, I'm guessing this isn't her higher self, but I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I just felt like I didn't have enough tools under my belt. And then, I asked some other people like, oh, that can't happen. Oh, it's just part of her mind. And I'm like, I don't know. It didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
Um, and since then, I'm like, I need to know how to help these people. Like, obviously, there's something there that I don't fully understand.
Mm.
And going through trying to learn some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff is like pretty brutal. It's like, oh, you got to chop their head off and banish them to the underworld. And like, it's like, I start talking, I just like have a conversation with them like, this is their grandma. I'm pretty sure we don't need to like slay grandma to like get rid of her. Like, pretty sure we can just talk to her. So like I found a person that kind of helped me. She's actually my shamanic teacher now, and
Okay.
um to actually come from this place of love, compassion, and just like you just have a conversation, find out why they're there, and there's always a relationship. Like this thing isn't coming to attack you to like like in most cases it's usually like something that's just showing up because like maybe you're at a low spot and needed a friend. Guess
Yeah.
what? Something shows up.
Yeah.
In the physical world, if like you're looking for a friend and all of a sudden, Steve shows up and all of a sudden
Right.
he's like, hanging out at your house and then he's been on your couch for 2 months, like eating all your food. You're like, okay, dude, time to go. But like in the non-physical world, you don't realize that these things are still like draining your energy.
Attached. Yeah. Yep.
Um, and it's interesting too. Like I thought it was kind of a one-way street, but like often I find the person's holding on to them
Yes.
more than, and they're like, I'm trying to go, like they
Yeah.
won't let me go, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, interesting.
Yeah. I've had those conversations many times of like, they want me here. Like
Yeah,
I was just stopping through or coming through and they held on.
yeah. Well, and then I'll ask the client, and then I'm like, so, I'm like, well, why? What the part of you is afraid to let this go? They're like, well, I don't know who I'll be without them. Okay, like
Yep.
I'm afraid to be alone. Okay, well, all things you need to address.
Yes. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. I love it. So could you explain a little more about entity attachments and how they can affect someone's well-being?
So just like anything, like I can see them like as draining energy. So if you feel like lethargic, the one that came to me that the first one I talked to,
Yeah.
we just met again recently, and like her suicidal thoughts or everything like was coming from this energy that was attached to her. It wasn't even her own thoughts.
Hmm.
Um, certain feelings, certain like a lot of times they're like draining energy, but they can also manifest as physical issues, even like mental issues because you're taking on what's part of them. So
Yeah.
they're sneaky too because they'll blend with you. So like it's very like it feels like your own thoughts after a while, and if
Yes.
it's been there a long time, you don't actually know that it's not you until
Hmm.
like until you separate this out, and then it's like then it's an instant shift. You're like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, those
Like
are my favorite, especially like ones that are done like utero, like something that attaches while you're just still in the womb. Those are the profound. Those are some of my favorites.
yeah, and that really like rocks a person because they're like they don't even know who they are anymore because they're like
Yeah.
such a hard shift because they thought that was them. So
Yep. Yeah.
I had one very early, and it actually felt like a part of me died. I actually felt like I lost like a family member, and even though knew it wasn't supposed to be there, and I knew it had to go, but it was just like
Hmm.
it left this like echo of sadness in me for a while that like
Yeah.
took a while to dissipate.
Right. Like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, it is like.
How does your training help other practitioners address entity attachments in a gentle and loving way?
So yeah, what I learned, I actually have passed on to other practitioners. I have a thing on my website. It actually guides people through this process
Oh, cool.
do this with clients.
Okay.
Because I feel that there's not this information out there. Like I had a hard time finding it. So if I can share that with other people, they're going to be able to help their people better,
Yeah.
and everything's going to go better. So
Hmm.
even if it's not really draining, they just kind of get in the way. So I call them just interfering energies,
Oh, I like
rather
that. Yeah.
because then
Yeah.
we're just like, oh, let's just talk to this energy. And it's not a big deal, just this red energy that's in your chest kind of thing,
Hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
just gonna have a conversation. Would you like
Yep.
to lie down? Yeah.
What's your favorite drink? Are you thirsty? Yeah.
Uh,
What does the process of clearing attachments look like in a session for you?
that looks really different for every person. I mean, is this dance? It's hard to put into
Yeah,
words, but most of
yeah,
the time, we usually begin this process of like identifying it, this awareness. So I usually have the person identify the energy first. So,
yeah.
and you can do that. You can do this at home if you're listening to this. So, where in the body are you feeling this energy? Okay, and then we try to label it. So you don't have to put it like a name with it necessarily, but how would you describe it? If you had to give it a color, what color would you give it?
Hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, it's starting to become more separate from you rather
Yeah,
than blending in you.
yeah.
Does it feel male, female, both, neither? If you had to give it a feeling or an emotion, what would it be?
Yeah, I like starting with the shape, especially if they're not feel like they're not getting an image. I'm like, well, what shape would you give it? And then just all
Yeah,
of a sudden, well, now it's kind of morphing into. I'm like, oh, okay. So just sometimes just getting that start with an
sure.
image, even if it's just again a shape, a color, a sound, a letter, anything.
Yeah, and from that space too, then it doesn't matter if it's an entity, if it's just like a thought form, if it's just stored energy, because you can still address it kind of in the same way.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and then usually have a conversation with it. Well, why are you here?
Hmm.
What drew you to Kenneth? What do you get at by being with Kenneth now? There's always like some dynamic, some sort of relationship.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember having a body? If it's an earthbound soul, or what was the last thing you remember? Were you ever attached to someone in the same way that you're attached to Kenneth now? And they'll
Hmm.
tell you this whole life story if
Yeah.
once you get into it. So
Yeah.
just asking those good questions, and then a lot of times they don't even realize that they're dead if they're like an earthbound soul. So, you know, um,
True. Yeah.
making them realize like, hey, this isn't you're not in your body, and a lot of times they're worried about like judgment or something on the other side, and just getting them to be at realize like, hey, nothing bad's going to happen. I'm going to help you to cross over. And
Hmm.
with some of the other energies and stuff like that, you just a little different finesse with some of the things. And sometimes you can just shine light on it to kind of differentiate, but then there's, regardless of how it is, then there's this process of separation. So we eventually begin this process of differentiation, separation, and I usually like try to illuminate the energy, kind of lighten it, give it a chance
Yeah.
to attune to divine light, or
Right.
even light from the client. I'll have them be like an active participant in this, like, and where they're doing it,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, then help it to move on. I'll call in some help, obviously. So a lot of
Hmm.
times I work with Archangel Michael to assist some of these energies and moving
Of
on. And
course. Yeah.
then, and then it's actually figuring out, well, what drew it to you in the first place. Otherwise, you just have a big open wound that,
Exactly.
and people miss that step, or
I,
they or
I
they
agree.
they
Yeah.
get rid of an entity and don't like guide it through like a portal of light or something like that. So now it's just floating around and it's just going to attach to someone else. So clean up
Correct.
your, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I love that you just said that. Thank you. Because it's very, very important, especially if you're not going to fill it with anything else, just fill it with love or light, or just again, just don't leave it open, an open wound. Just yeah,
What is the first thing something's gonna do? It's just gonna like, hey, look at this.
exactly. Yep. Something usually parasitic
Here's,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
here's a nice warm spot. So sometimes I'll even do like even like healing and like even like soul retrieval on that soul that's going
Yeah.
across, and like so it's fully complete. And then part of me is like I didn't realize like how healing this was for those other souls, but I've had them come back in other like sessions and stuff and thank me for helping them
Oh,
to move on and cross over. I'm like, wow, I didn't really get that part of it, like how full circle this is.
yeah.
It's a win-win-win for
It
everyone.
really, really is.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I can't say good enough good things about this work, and it makes me giddy. It really does. Which is
And
why I
then
started this podcast. I'm like, I have so many fun connections and people who feel the same way about me. Let's share this amazingness. Let's just tell the world, let them all know.
love it. And I think a big thing is dropping the fear around it. Like a lot
Yes.
of people have these, and when you realize it's just like, even in this work, it's like an occupational hazard. You just pick up stuff and like, okay, what's here? I just see it as an opportunity if something attaches to me. Like, what am I not seeing within myself that needs to be addressed? And
Yep.
they're usually not too ingrained at this point where I can just help
Hmm.
them move on,
Yeah.
find that way. And
It's a constant process. It really is.
yeah.
Why do you think it's important for healers to understand this area of work in order to be effective in their healing?
Oh, I think it's critical because people aren't going to get
Yeah,
the healing that they need if stuff is in the way. You're
right.
just able to like get some some roundabout stuff, but you're not actually able to like heal the full person because these things are kind of in the way. So
Hmm.
I don't usually go out looking for them. I usually address them as they kind of pop up. I
Right.
know other practitioners and stuff will address them like even before they start with a person. That's the first thing they do. But
Yeah.
I usually just it's just on a case by case basis, and usually like maybe like 1 out of 3 people I'll actually do that process with. And
Would you classify these as like possessions? Would you go
um,
down that route? Because
people
it's a
use that
slippery
people use
slope.
that people use that word, but like I
Because to
don't
me,
really.
it's the same for me. Like if someone's possessed, if
It,
someone's whatever, it's an attachment. It's a
I've
yeah.
had I've had things yelling at me in different languages, and I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, so can you translate to English? Like,
Right. Yeah.
this is the energy of stuff, and they'll translate for me. And like, I've had some pretty energetic ones where people are crappie flopping around and
Yeah.
like yelling stuff, and just like, okay, but I'm just sipping my tea, handling it the same way because it's like it is all from like the same thing. Like even the darkest thing you can imagine is still from source, from creator, and
Yes.
you can help it to move on. So.
Right. And you can't lower your frequency to meet it so it can attach to you too. So you just got to remain like that lighthouse, as I usually use that analogy of just I see all you guys out there. I'm right here. If you need the light, here's the love. Here's yeah, it's yeah.
I'm curious
Um,
what your thought. One of the ones that people have been telling me, like, "Oh, I'm such a beacon of light that all these entities show up for to
like a bug
attach to you."
zapper.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if they're all attached to you because of that,
Yeah.
but
Where I'm like, I think maybe you're more of a bug
like,
zapper than a lighthouse at that point. You're just drawing in all the creepy crawlies.
I think even just sometimes they're just lost and confused, and you just get to like
Exactly. Yeah.
help
And
them
like, oh,
move
that
on.
light looks pretty. Let me go towards that. Yeah.
Sure, like why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? Especially if you're lost and you're trying to find your way, why wouldn't you be drawn to something
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
that?
Now that you're on this path, how do you see the future of healing for everyone?
I see a big picture with like the medical community embracing this type of work, and I think it's actually happening. Like I just gave a talk to a bunch of like physicians and stuff like that about this stuff, and they
Nice.
contact me out of the blue, and I'm like, you know what I do, right? And I'm like, crap, they found like an old resume or something.
Oh,
And
yeah.
how do I explain this? But no, they genuinely wanted to know this. They were like, we
Yeah.
know how to help people, and they're seeing the benefit in this. So I think that's really cool. I think the more that I don't know these worlds can kind of come together, that's really where the magic's going to happen because
Yeah.
when we can put all these things together, everything we know, I think things will really benefit then. So.
Yeah. One of the visions that I've heard shared by many healers and practitioners is like a hospital where it's like a real healing hospital with each tier, like
Mm.
say 7 tiers, and each one is for that frequency, for that chakra, if you will. And each person goes to that level for that healing. And it's just I'm like, oh my God, I love that. And now I've been having that vision too. It's just like,
Well,
okay,
now I will.
it's manifesting. Yeah, it's happening. It's and then all of like the med beds and all the disclosure that's coming out, like it's just it's only a matter of time. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we might even be obsolete at some point where it's just like I think this is critical during this time, but it's just changing in ways that I can't even wrap my mind around. I've had some like glimpses of stuff. I'm like, how can that even be yet? But like I don't think it's
Seriously.
that far off either. Like
No, it's not. Like it's yeah, it's really not. What advice do you have for people who feel skeptical about alternative healing?
um I think it's great to have some healthy skepticism, but
Yeah, I
like
still am very skeptical.
sure, but I think at the same time, you can also be doing a disservice to yourself because of your power. Your power belief is so powerful. Like often,
Yeah,
I'll tell people when I start working with them, like whether you believe this worked or didn't, you're right. You can
exactly. Yep, I've used that before.
create that. So why would you want to create that for yourself?
Exactly.
Tell yourself something different. Create yourself something different, and just stay open. Yeah, you can still be skeptical. You can still have that like healthy like discernment and stuff like that because especially you need that, especially in this world with like
Oh my
we're being
gosh.
all this stuff thrown at us like AI and stuff like that. You have to really hone in your own intuition, your own discernment, your own
Yeah.
judgment. I think that's
more than
actually pushing
ever.
us. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's actually beautiful because people are like having to trust themselves. And that's
Hmm.
probably one of the biggest things I see lacking with most people is they're like not trusting themselves. They've
Yes.
lost that connection with their inner voice, this inner guidance, or they put so much emphasis on what other people say. I even tell people, don't listen to me just because I said it. Like this is what I
For
know
real.
today. I change by tomorrow, you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah. For real.
so just like figuring out what that is and how to like follow that for yourself is huge, I think.
I agree. I agree. So if someone is new to quantum healing, what advice would you give to them?
Go experience for yourself. If you're feeling called, if you're watching this, it's calling to you in some way, shape, or form, and you're ready. Even if your human's not, your soul is. So
Yep. Yeah.
take the
And
dive. You have nothing to lose except all the crap that's holding you back.
yeah, and that's what I'll tell people. Like I don't have one person who's ever felt worse afterwards. Even if there's skeptical and didn't have a magical cosmic experience, they at least feel better.
Yeah.
Like that not enough.
I've had people sleep through their whole thing and they still get
Yes.
like
Some people just cry the entire time, but they it's was necessary. Like it's just yeah.
yeah, and like it's even in ways that I can't even put into words, you know, like how do you even describe some of these things? Like trying to describe like how it all plays out. And I still think mine is happening from, you know, that first session. I still think like that's still playing
Oh
out and
yeah,
rippling out from that first shift that we made.
for
And
sure.
even to like even to put a value on it, I mean, I got past $100,000 in what $100,000 in medical expenses couldn't in one day. Like, how do you like?
Seriously.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's kind of disgusting, honestly, but that's why we're here. Is to shift all that, I guess.
I think and personally, I think I needed that hard shift to
Yeah,
really get sold on this because I couldn't be behind 100% if like I didn't have that experience. So like,
right.
once again, all very purposeful.
Hmm. Yeah, and it helps again with this work to have that background and that knowledge because it's not new age as people call it. It is again, it just got separated somewhere. Who cares who did it back then? But it's just yeah, I'm a nerd though, so I love it. All right, so one of the last things I always ask, just to wrap things up, a fun question, is if you had a superpower, what would it be and how would you use it to help humanity?
Whew. Oh wow.
Yeah, the trick is the help humanity
Yep.
part.
Yeah. I think it would be to easily access all these different timelines to for healing. So
Hmm. Okay, I like that. Simple
yeah,
enough. That'd be very effective too.
simple enough but confusing enough.
Right, yes, it can be. Yeah. If you don't know what you're doing.
Well, I like that we can ask anything in these sessions. The last time I asked about like simultaneous time, like the fact that everything is happening in this now moment.
Yeah.
Like there's no past, there's no future. I'm like, okay, I can kind of grasp that. I'm like, what about like sequence? Like, didn't my mom have to have me before I could be in this now moment?
Right. Yeah. That can be a
And
little mind pretzeling for sure.
the answer they told me was, it's actually your inability to understand the backward motion of forward moving events that creates the illusion of sequence and time, human. And I'm like, ah, like who
Okay. Right.
like,
Mic drop.
yeah.
I love it.
Just mind candy, but I think it helps us to like understand to be able to like help people better. And
Yeah, yeah, and we're getting there again, just with the science and the quantum physics of everything and all the AI, all of the things, just all is saying and doing the same thing. It really is. All right, well, Matt, it's I could talk to you forever. Please come back. I'm so honored. Let the people know
likewise.
where they can work with you, find more about you.
I'm Matt Schmidt, QH, on pretty much everything. So you can find me
Mhm.
there on the Book of Faces, on Instagram, on my website is that YouTube channel. I have a lot of free resources to help people. Everything that we've
Yeah,
talked about today, I have guided processes on there to help you navigate those. Just because it's not an in-person quantum healing session, you can still get the benefits from that. So someone the other
absolutely.
day contacted me. Her brain tumor went away in 3 weeks just going through the videos I have. So you don't need me to do this. Like you
Yeah,
are powerful. If you
exactly.
take nothing more away from this, just know that your body's ability to heal itself is greater than anyone's permitted you to believe.
Well said. That's beautiful. Now, I was just going to ask if you had any more closing messages or advice for those that are struggling in their healing journey or just questioning their path.
I would say that this is momentary. Momentary. things it's real easy to get down. It's hard when you're in the middle of it, but just know that there is light on the other side. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So you
Mm,
make that choice today to find that joy in each moment. You don't have to go through a process like this to start doing this. Start doing those things that bring you just a little bit more joy than the other options. And pretty soon you'll look back like 6 months from now, a year from now, you can be like, wow, look how much my life has shifted just
yep,
because you're constantly on that new trajectory. So,
yep. Because what is time? Like,
yeah.
so just why, so start now. Why not now?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, folks, if you love this episode, please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It's annoying to ask, but it helps so much to spread this love and light and just to keep these conversations reaching as many people as possible. Matt, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate you. And everyone, have an amazing
Likewise.
everything, and we'll speak soon.